Before we start the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. And now, let's go. Story 1. The last time I posted about this, I recounted the events of my early childhood growing up in an Apalchian town in Virginia. I briefly mentioned our unspoken rules and what happened to me in the forest. But this was only the tip of a very big, very deep iceberg. If you didn't see the first part, I'll link it here. https://www.reddit.com/user/heineke/don't_whistle_don't_sing honestly. You can read this without knowing about that, but it does provide some useful context. After the events I discussed in part 1, life became relatively normal again. I continued my homeschooling with my dad, who I got most of my social interaction from. I spent my time indoors, mostly reading. In truth, I had become afraid to go outside. I had explained to the police and to my parents about that night that Katie had led me into the woods, but I was shrugged off at every turn. My mom did take me to a doctor after it happened. She was worried I had hallucinated and that it was a sign of some mental condition. The doctor said it was probably a response to stress, that I'd imagined Katie because I felt isolated and my brain filled in the gaps with something familiar. A defense mechanism, he called it. I didn't believe a word of it. I heard her voice. I felt her touch. Those were no illusions. But I went along with their explanation anyway. It was clear I would get no support, and I just wanted the whole thing to be over. This seemed like the easiest way for that to happen. Like I said, I was afraid to be outside. My town was a tiny island in an ocean of green. There was no escaping the forest. It stood on every horizon, and so did the things that lurked within it. Being outside made me feel like one of those worms you feed to reptiles, like I was trapped in a cage with something dangerous. Yet, unlike the worms, I had never seen whatever thing caused my nightmares. My solution, as I mentioned, was to remain inside as much as possible. I figured that whatever was in the forest would leave me alone if I just hid myself away. This created an underlying problem that my parents quickly picked up on. I was becoming socially awkward. Weird, frankly. So, when I was 11, they enrolled me in the same middle school that Katie was going to. I had mixed feelings. Being an awkward kid, I was terrified. But at the same time, my crush on Katie had only gotten stronger since the day we became friends. I held no resentment or fear of her, despite what had happened. She had told me earnestly it wasn't her that day, and I took her at her word. She had been my best and only friend, and I trusted her. The first half of the year reflected my contrasting emotions. I was bullied quite often, only to have Katie stand up for me. Honestly, I didn't make being friends with me easy. I often remember and shrivel up at how unaware and embarrassing I was. I can only imagine how Katie felt. She was tiny compared to the guys who picked on me, but that didn't deter her in the least. She would, and on occasion did, flatten anyone who tried to mess with me. I had my own personal bodyguard keeping me safe. But one week, Katie wasn't around. If I recall correctly, she had some faraway relative's funeral to attend. So for that week, I was a sitting duck, something that the older kids took advantage of every chance they got. My armor was gone, and this was a golden opportunity to freely mess with the homeschooled kid. I remember coming home with a black eye only to get scolded by my dad for fighting. I thought I was going to die that week. I'm pretty confident I would have gotten worse than the eye if it hadn't been for Micah. I met him on a humid afternoon during lunch period. I was sitting alone, as I had been all week without Katie, when a green-eyed boy with an Avenged Sevenfold t-shirt made himself comfortable next to me. My mouth opened as I tried to form words, but my vocal cords failed me. Without a word, he went through my lunchbox as if it was his. I assumed he was just another bully, and I was hoping he'd simply take my food and leave me alone. I was content enough to go hungry if it meant I'd keep my other eye unblackened. But after a moment of shuffling through my food, he just said, "Your lunch sucks, dude. An egg sandwich and broccoli? Your parents hate you or something." I was dumbfounded. One part relieved he didn't take my food or hit me, the other part offended by his attack on my lunch. I offered a shy explanation. Well, it's really not so bad. I like egg sandwiches, and broccoli is good for you. He waved his hand dismissively to silence me. Reaching into his backpack, he brandished a bag of potato chips and gave them to me. I hesitantly took them from him as he spoke. "You're that new kid, right? I'm Micah." He looked me over. With a boyish grin, he added, "You know, you wouldn't get beat up so much if you quit wearing that lame shirt." This left me even more dumbfounded than his previous comment about my food. My Ninja Turtle shirt was my pride and joy. I immediately felt foolish, untying the jacket around my waist and putting it over my shirt despite the warm weather. Stuttering, I answered him, "I'm Richard, but my friends call me Rich." He asked, "Friends? Don't you only hang out with that other girl?" I felt as if I was having my life examined. A popular kid was questioning as to why I only had one friend. I had no good answer, only an embarrassed, "Yeah." His expression took on a more friendly disposition. "Well, now you can hang out with two people." Looking back, I realized that Micah was doing me a bigger favor than just giving me junk food. He was popular in our grade, and he knew that if he sat with me, my bullies would leave me alone. A sort of social credit by proxy. We chatted throughout that week, getting to know each other. He wasn't like me at all. He was bold and confident, almost to the point of arrogance. There was one thing that allowed us to connect. Micah liked art. We spent much of that first week flipping through each other's notebooks, admiring the other's work. He was admittedly better at it than I was. Still, I wasn't nearly as comfortable with him as I was with Katie. But he was a good person, even if he was a bit more obnoxious than I was used to. His parents were going through a particularly nasty divorce that year. Looking back, I wonder if his bold personality was a way to mask his turmoil. I really wish I had been a better friend to him. He needed more help than I knew. When Katie did return, he remained. We had added a new member into our little duo. His personality meshed well with Katie's. They weren't entirely dissimilar. Katie's fiery attitude and his boldness led us to all types of adventures, ones whose memories still comfort me despite what happened after. Just as we always had, we spent our time outside of school wandering the town. We had been everywhere multiple times, but it never got old with my now group of friends. But I never forget where I was. The forest was still there. I had insisted we stop playing on its outskirts ever since the night I got lost. Where before the tree leans seemed familiar and friendly, it now felt ominous and foreboding, almost like it was alive. It stood watch on the horizon, yearning to reach out and take what it had lost that night me. I think Katie picked up on my fear of the forest, and she never pushed me about it. Micah, on the other hand, was quick to probe me about it as soon as he saw how uncomfortable it made me. It happened over spring break. We would spend the mornings playing baseball or messing with the neighbors. Then we would go get lunch in town with the allowance Micah's parents gave him and go watch whatever awful horror movie was playing that night. It was the happiest I would ever be. But one day, Micah could resist the forest's allure no longer. He suggested we all go swimming in the creek. It was pretty hot given the time of year, and the creek was a popular spot. Unfortunately, it was in the forest, a bit less than a quarter-mile off of the path. There was no way I would even entertain the idea. When I gave my nervous rejection of his plan, he saw the fear on my face and said, "Come on, man. Don't be a pussy. It's literally just trees, rocks, and water." I didn't want to explain to him that he was wrong. I couldn't put into words, but I knew there was something in those woods. Something unnatural. I had felt it breathing down my neck, heard its calculated steps as it stalked me. I just want to stop talking about it. So I gave a lame excuse. My dad said I'm not allowed in the forest, and I have to work on my history presentation anyway. Sorry. Micah scoffed with a smug grin. Allowed? You're not allowed. Do you hear yourself? Take the stick out of your ass and have some fun, man. In truth, I hated the situation. Not just because Micah wanted me to go to the one place I never wanted to be again, but because it was a perfect illustration of his courage against my own timid cowardice. And what's worse, it was happening right in front of Katie. Still, as she always did, Katie came to my rescue. "Nah, he's right. His dad's a hard ass. He doesn't even want him hanging out with me." "Oh," he said, dragging the word out. "Is that what this is? Strict dad doesn't want his little boy dating the bad influence next door?" I wanted to hit Micah. He was making a fool of me on purpose, making me look bad in front of Katie. I stammered, immediately flushed. "I am not dating anyone." Micah snickered. Sure. Whatever you say, lover boy. Katie shoved his shoulder playfully, and my stomach turned with jealousy. All right, dickhead, enough teasing. Let's just hang out somewhere not in the middle of a creepy old forest. Arcade? Bowling. The playful tone made me forget the friendship I had with Micah. Right now, all he was to me was competition, and one I didn't think I could win. Micah shrugged. Nah, I'm good. It's like 100 degrees. Think I'll check out the creek anyway. I could use a swim. Alone, Katie asked with genuine concern in her voice. Even without my superstition, the forest was not somewhere to be alone. I then said something I will regret until my death. I encouraged him. What? You afraid he'll get eaten by a pine tree? I said with a smirk. He'll be fine. Even as the words left my mouth, I hated them. They weren't mine, they were borrowed, stolen from the part of me that wanted to seem brave. That wanted to impress Katie. That wanted to be more like Micah. Micah gave me a smile. He knew what I was doing, and instead of calling me out, he played along because that's the kind of person he was. See? Richie here gets it. You two go hold hands at the bowling alley, or whatever. He was wingmanning me. He knew I had a thing for Katie, and he knew I was insecure. It fills me with shame to this day. I did not deserve to be his friend. I only wish I saw it back then, too. Katie shrugged. Suit yourself. We walked with him until the woods were in sight, which was as close as I was willing to get. We agreed to meet up again the next day, as we had that whole week. With that, Micah turned and sauntered toward the trail, whistling as he disappeared into the trees. My eyes remained on him for a moment as the woods swallowed him up, and a chill ran down my spine. Katie and I went to the arcade several blocks into the town. The whole time after we had left him, I had been rationalizing to myself that I was being paranoid about Micah. I told myself he was right, that all I was afraid of were trees and rocks. I was lying to myself, and I knew it. Still, I remember genuinely having fun that afternoon, laughing and losing track of time. For a while, I forgot to be afraid. Spending time with Katie like we had when we first met erased my worries and my petty jealousy. And when the sun set and it was time for us to go home, all I felt was grateful that I had someone like her in my life in any capacity. But we didn't see Micah again the next morning. Usually, we would convene at this old convenience store, the type that has barrels full of old-fashioned candies and toffees. It was a nice center point between mine and Katie's neighborhood and Micah's. We waited for an hour, then two. I was trying to stay calm, but inwardly, panic was growing like a fire. I was sure that the forest, or whatever was in it, had snatched him up, that I had let my friend stroll right into his death because I was too cowardly or too jealous of him to stop him. My panic grew to the point that it outweighed my desire to keep up a cool front. And so, Katie and I went to his house to check on him. His mom answered the door, a tall, thin woman who looked very tired. She gave us a smile and told us Micah came down with a fever. He was resting and would be fine. I asked if I could see him, only to say hello. I wanted to see with my own eyes that he was all right. Nothing else would soothe the crushing guilt I felt. Micah's mother insisted that we let him rest and sent us on our way. We didn't hear from him for the remainder of spring break. I obsessed over his health for the remaining 2 days, constantly texting him and Katie for any new information. I was treating it as if he had been in some sort of near-fatal accident. It wasn't until the following Monday, when Micah strolled casually into class, that I was able to let out the breath I had been holding for days. I must have been smiling in relief, because the first thing he did was make a kissy face and say, "Ah, missed me?" I answered, annoyance clear in my voice. "I spammed your phone all week. I thought you died or something." He shrugged. "Yeah, I came down with something hard. Maybe some germs from the creek, or whatever." "Gross," Katie muttered. He turned to me. "You missed out, by the way. Creek was great. Water was cold as hell, but still." I scoffed. "Missed out on what? Some disease water and a fever?" "No thanks." I hesitated before adding, "Glad you didn't die, though. How bad was it?" He laughed, same. "Honestly, not so bad. Just a flu. I did have some weird-ass dreams while I was out, though." Katie perked up. "Like what?" He leaned back in his seat. "I was in the forest, in a meadow, and I could hear someone talking to me. It's weird, but I felt really good. Like safe, I guess. I don't know how to describe it well. It felt like Christmas when you're a little kid. But I woke up before the dream could end. It was like turning off a movie before it's over. Katie snickered. You probably got high from your tiny brain being boiled by the fever. I'm surprised there are any brain cells left. Micah rolled his eyes. Whatever, it was the nicest dream I've had in forever. I stayed quiet. I didn't like the forest. I was terrified of it. I knew there was nothing inherently sinister about Micah's dreams, but any discussion about that place made me uneasy. We went through the week, as we always did. School, exploring the town, then going home when the sun went down. Life in the wooded town resumed as normal, continuing on as time left it lagging behind. The only exception to this was Micah's topics of conversation. As days turned to weeks, Micah would tell us more and more often about the amazing dreams he was having. We were sitting at a lunch table on an overcast afternoon when Micah asked excitedly, "Do you guys believe in heaven?" Katie and I both blinked, but Micah continued before we could say anything. "My grandma died 7 years ago, but I keep seeing her in my dreams. She keeps telling me she's visiting me from heaven, that she's here to help me." Katie spoke up, I think with innocent intention. "My mom said people don't come back from heaven. Why would they even want to?" This seemed to anger Micah. "Well, she's wrong. My grandma's been there." I looked at him. "She talks to you?" He nodded quickly, eyes bright. "Almost every night. She says she misses me, says she can help. She can make my parents stop fighting, make things go back to how they used to be." Micah's parents' divorce was a bit of an elephant in the room throughout our friendship. I could tell it ate at him, but I never wanted to pry. He seemed to prefer to ignore it. I asked, careful not to further upset him, "How?" He didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "She says I just have to tell her my name." I asked, "Your name?" Wouldn't he already know it? Micah didn't look at me. He just stared at the floor. "She said names are different where she is. You have to give them again." None of us really knew what to say after that. It felt like something too strange and too sad to push back on. Micah, despite his usual appearances, had suffered a lot during his short life. And if this gave him hope, I didn't see the harm in it. But after that conversation, something in Micah started to shift. For the next few weeks, he was just off. He looked exhausted all the time. He would zone out mid-conversation, and he wasn't doing well in school anymore. Katie and I confronted him about it more than once, but he brushed it off as nothing each time. It got to the point where the teachers began to notice. They called him to the student counselor's office regularly, making him absent during our lunch hangouts. I can remember one time he fell asleep in science class. Mr. Jackson, our science teacher, stopped mid-lecture and quietly walked him to the counselor's office, like he'd done a dozen times already. He always seemed concerned about Micah, more than the other teachers, but he never said much about it. The school blamed his home life for his behavior, and maybe they were right. Looking back, this was all perfectly explainable. Expected even. I mentioned that Micah's parents were going through an awful divorce. What middle schooler wouldn't be sad and tired? Katie and I did our best to help out. We would do his homework for him when he couldn't. We brought extra food to school in case he didn't have the energy to make a lunch. We invited him out to his favorite spots as often as we could, anything to cheer him up. In truth, I just wanted my friend back. I felt stupid for being jealous of someone who had been so kind to me. And after a few weeks, that's exactly what I got. Micah sat down at our lunch table one sunny afternoon, wearing a grin like nothing had ever happened. Katie and I froze mid-bite. He hadn't smiled in weeks. Then he said, "Hey guys," as if he hadn't spent a month vanishing into himself. Katie and I exchanged glances before she gave a hesitant, "Hey, you feeling all right?" Micah, mouth full of his PB&J, simply nodded and said, "MHM." Katie pushed a bit further. "How are your parents?" Micah gave a confused look. "My parents? What about them?" She asked. "Isn't that why you've been so, I don't know, depressed?" Micah shook his head. "Depressed? Nah, I just had some trouble sleeping." Katie was fed up with him. With annoyance in her voice, she asked, "Can you just tell us already? You've been dead quiet for a month. What's wrong?" Micah paused, like he didn't want to say it. His plastic smile faltered slightly. Then he exhaled through his nose and muttered, "It was my grandma." Katie gave an outraged scoff. "Your grandma? The one who's been dead for like 1,000,000 years? Why would that make you so sad out of nowhere?" Micah finally gave up what he had been hiding. No, I told you she comes to me in my dreams. She kept asking me what my name was, but I don't know, I just had a bad feeling. So I never told her. She got mad. Really, really mad. She kept screaming at me, hurting me. I could feel it. Every time I woke up, my body still stung. I'm really sorry I've been so quiet and tired. But how would you feel if your grandma ripped you to pieces every night in your dreams? I was horrified. It's that bad. Micah nodded. It was. My mom said I was having night terrors. Like really bad nightmares, pretty much. Don't tell anyone this, but she took me to a shrink. Didn't help, though. Katie asked, so, why do you look all chipper today? Micah smiled again. 'Cause it stopped. Last night was the best night's sleep I've ever had. I asked, it just stopped? Just like that. Micah seemed a bit distant in his response, like he was in thought. No, not just like that. Last night, he hesitated. I was just so sick of it. I told her my name. I questioned, and then the night terrors just went away. Yeah, when I told her my name, she got really calm. Still, she said it back to me, and then he asked me something. She asked me. Micah's words faded. He stared through the table, like he'd lost track of the conversation. Katie coughed to get his attention, which snapped him out of it. He blinked, smiled, and popped the last corner of his sandwich into his mouth. Anyway, I'm fine now. Best night's sleep I've had in forever. We didn't question him further. I was just happy to see him with some life in his eyes again. I think Katie was too. Even this was selfish, however. Inwardly, I blamed all of this on his excursion to the creek. I had sent him there, knowing what could happen. The fact that he was okay again made me feel like I was absolved. The bullet had been dodged, and we could go back to being friends. And everything was perfect, just as it had been before. I was so relieved that life was normal again. I had resolved to let go of my jealousy towards Micah as best I could. The only notable difference I can remember from that time is that Micah had developed a habit of scratching and fidgeting with his spot right where his shoulder met his neck. At the time, I don't think any of us thought anything of it. To my great sadness, this period of peace didn't last long. As the weeks went by, I saw less and less of Micah. Not in the sense that I didn't spend time with him, but rather that he seemed so distant and not like he was before. There was a constant fog that separated his mind from us, and we had to struggle through it for any amount of interaction with him. In school, he looked like he was sleeping with his eyes open, perfectly still save the scratching. Just as before, Katie and I decided to confront him in hopes of coming up with some type of diagnosis for his behavior. But any attempt was short-lived, as he would respond with one-word answers or simply grunts. I can't stress how bad this got. It was like Micah was fading away. Katie and I were panicking. We went to parents, teachers, anyone we could think of. We even took Micah to the hospital, leading him like a drugged animal. Looking back, it makes me sick. Every single one of them either dismissed it as nothing or made us question ourselves. We had all but given up hope until a rumor found its way to us. It started as a throwaway conversation with some girl in Katie's gym class, someone she barely knew, just passing the time during warm-ups. Katie had made an offhand comment about Micah, something to the effect of, yeah, my friend's been acting weird lately, like he's not even there anymore. But the girl surprised her. Creepy, she said. Sounds like that kid from Edison last year. Katie asked what she meant, and the girl shrugged it off. I don't know. My cousin goes there. Said some guy just started acting super weird. Like freaked out weird. Wouldn't talk to anyone. Pretty much a walking zombie. Then one day, he just stopped coming to school. People say he ran away or something. Katie told me all of this that afternoon, her voice low and nervous. His name was Dylan. He was the same as Micah the sleepwalking, the brain fog. Apparently his friends even said he wouldn't shut up about his dreams. I had never heard his name before. Neither had anyone I knew. A different kid, a different school, but the same signs. Do you know what happened? I asked. Katie pulled out her phone. She'd already looked it up. February 11th last year. That's the last day anyone saw him. My blood froze in my veins. I knew that day. It was the same day this nightmare had started, the night I had gone missing in the woods. I didn't say anything at first. Katie just sat there, eyes locked on the ground like she was afraid of what I might say. Something had tied us all together, not with rope or chains, but with something older, something malevolent. After that, I started watching Micah differently. Not like a friend, but as a hospice patient. We had exhausted our options, asked everyone we knew to ask, checked every corner of the library and of the internet. No one had any explanation that could cure our friend. That didn't stop us from trying, of course. But inwardly, I knew we wouldn't succeed. Towards the end, I would often catch Micah standing dead still, facing the horizon, the same dark, looming tree that I tried so hard to forget meeting Micah's gaze. He did begin to speak more, but it was not any sign of recovery, only incoherent ramblings. The school handled it as they had before, sending him to frequent but fruitless counselor meetings. It wasn't unusual for him to spend most of the day in the school's office. I spent a lot of my time alone crying. Through the year that I'd known him, he'd really touched my heart. He stood up for me without fail any time I needed him. He pushed my boundaries, giving me the bravery to leave my shell. He and Katie had been the best friends I ever could have asked for. I blamed myself for what he had become, this hollowed-out version of the boy I knew. I couldn't explain it, but this was all because of that night in the woods, because of me. The forest's eyes had never left me since that day. Not for an instant. And now Micah was paying for it. We would sit with him during our free periods and after school and talk to him. I don't think he really hurt us anymore. Wherever he had gone, he was far away from us. On one afternoon like this, Katie, Micah, and I were sitting by the front of the school. The day had passed, and we were waiting for our parents to come get us. We were chatting half-heartedly, trying to get Micah to react to something, anything. We had put a pen and notebook into Micah's limp hands, try without success to get him to draw like he used to. Katie's mom was the first to arrive. She hesitated, but I could tell she was glad to leave. Seeing Micah like this was hard on her, too. After she left, I spoke to Micah. Casually at first, I mentioned schoolwork, sports, shows we used to talk about. But he didn't so much as blink. The only movement was when he would scratch at his neck. Eventually, I told him things I'd been holding back, things I should have expressed him long before. Hey, Micah, I never really told you. He didn't move, speak, or do anything to even acknowledge my presence. You're my best friend. I had already begun to tear up. I paused, hoping for a response. But when none came, I went on. You should have just stayed away from me that day. You should have just let those 8th graders beat me up. None of this would have happened if you'd just ignored me like everyone else. My words were every bit as rambling as Micah's, but I didn't care. Tears were streaming down my cheeks. I didn't know the words to portray what I wanted to say to him. But even if I did, it wouldn't have mattered. Micah was gone. He had been for weeks now. So I said the only thing I could think to say, I'm sorry. Micah's eyes never left the forest at the edge of town. I should have screamed, or shaken him, or begged him to come back. But I didn't. I just sat there, hollow and quiet, same as him. After a long silence, he started rambling again. At first, it was just sounds, wet clicks of his tongue, breathless muttering. Then words, but barely. The trees go down and never stop. Just more wood curling like veins. I swallowed. Hard. I didn't know what he was talking about. I froze. It was the panic of a child faced with something too big, too strange. That useless kind of fear where all you can do is watch. And then, without warning, his voice became frantic. A panicked yell, almost rabid. Throat full of pine cones, bark under my skin, under my soul, hollows them out, fills them up with leaves. The roots. His hands worked furiously. With one, he was scribbling madly into the notebook on his lap, shaking so hard I thought he might break apart. The other hand scratched at his neck as he raved on, a mouth with 7 teeth and no tongue. He paused, then whispered almost reverently, and under empty. That's when Mr. Jackson, our science teacher, approached. I guess Micah's outburst had drawn attention from inside the building. He crouched beside us, placing a gentle hand on Micah's shoulder. It was so subtle I barely noticed. Mr. Jackson's eyes lingered for just a moment too long on the spot that Micah had been scratching all this time. I saw it too, a tiny mark in the center of his raw patch of skin. I only saw it for a moment. It wasn't something I could explain away as a bug bite or a rash. It was like someone had left a tiny brand on him from within his skin. Mr. Jackson hid his glance with a warm smile at me. I'll take care of him. You just get home, okay?" Then he turned to Micah, speaking softly, guiding him up like someone handling a wounded animal. The notebook fell from his lap to the dust below. Mr. Jackson didn't ask questions, just led Micah slowly back toward the school. I was still frozen in place, but I trusted Mr. Jackson. He had always been kind to me. After a moment, I looked down at Micah's book, which I choose to believe he left for me intentionally. It gives me comfort to think he was still there, that he heard my words to him. In his frantic episode, he had scribbled words into pages, nearly stabbing through them with the pen. Words that, like their predecessors from my first post, will never leave my mind, speak low beneath the dreaming bark, or bear what cannot fade. The ones who answer gentle calls, wake with roots now softly laid. There are no walls of rock or stone, yet none shall ever leave. For those who stray are called below, and fathers wail, and mothers grieve. Each name unspooled and softly sewn, in cloth the woods have spun. No hands can tear the pattern loose, no thread will come undone. I put Micah's notebook with me when my father came to pick me up. It felt important, like a piece of Micah himself. I didn't want to lose it. As we were driving up the hill away from the school, I saw Micah from a distance. He and Mr. Jackson were behind the school. Micah was being led into the woods. I saw the branches open like arms, welcoming Micah in. I never saw him again. Not in person, at least. That night, I dreamed of the woods. I was back there the same night I had gotten lost. The footsteps behind me, the breath of something terrible wafting down my neck as I marched hopelessly onward with silent tears. But this time I turned around. I saw an army of silhouettes in the trees. Some old, some young. People I didn't recognize. Their eyes were replaced with stones and wood. Soil and grass spilled from their mouths. Their skin was rotten and bloated. The only exception being Micah. He was the one breathing down my neck in my dream. Like the others, his eyes were missing. Only he had no earth, grass, wood, or stones to replace his missing physiology. He grabbed me by the shoulders and screamed at me with 1,000 voices. Roots sprouted out of his arms, out of his veins, and dug into my flesh. He, and I with him, began to sink into the ground. The earth enveloped my legs, my torso, my neck. I tasted the dirt as it filled my lungs and covered my body. I woke screaming as the earth sealed over my head. The search for Micah was brief. No one seemed to care other than me and Katie. No one believed me when I accused Mr. Jackson. Why would they? I'd already cried wolf once when I said Katie led me into the forest. I was just one kid with an overactive imagination. Or crazy. Easy for anyone to dismiss. But I know the truth. They didn't ignore me because I sounded crazy. They ignored me because I wasn't supposed to be heard. They didn't dismiss me to protect themselves from fear. They did it to protect the forest. Story 2. They say the Appalachians are older than trees, that the rock that formed them has been around for 500 million years. In that time, something unnatural has evolved there to be the perfect predator. At least that's my theory. There was never an official investigation launched. I won't mention the name of the company. I signed 6 different types of NDAs. What I can say is, despite everything being state-of-the-art and the company being relatively brand new, all branding, references, and imagery for the company I worked for when it happened no longer exists. I mean, I'm sure I could find it if I scrubbed deep enough, but from what I gathered, they now exist as a completely different entity. It scares me to think what they may be unearthing still. When I arrived, it was 2022. I had recently gotten my master's degree in robotics from Northeastern. My recruitment was by chance. My thesis matched the exact project they were working on. Thermal insulation strategies for sustained robotic functionality in sub-zero environments. I made it sound as pretentious as possible. Hey, it worked. About a week after presenting and defending my thesis, I got an email for a job offer. The whole process was unassuming. Interviews, conversations, everything totally normal. My job was going to be working on different insulation methods for ambulatory robotics. Think Boston Dynamics, 4-legged machines. I was stoked to find a job in my field so quickly, I didn't even care the location stated was a remote ridge in the Smoky Mountains. I signed on immediately. When they said remote, boy, they meant it. No roads led to the facility. The only way in or out was by helipad, although I did see snowmobile patrol a handful of times. I didn't think much of it at the time. We were going to be working on pretty advanced stuff, and pretty much everybody assumed it was for military application. As such, we kept our mouths shut and kept at work. My team's main job was to keep our robots operational in the winter snow without lockup or freezing of the joints. We had made pretty good progress in the time I was there. One night, we made a particularly big breakthrough with battery capacity. It was so big, in fact, we decided to celebrate the only way young, awkward robotics engineers knew how. Lots and lots of drinking. That was the night it happened. I'll give as many details as I can remember. My 3 buddies were drinking with me in my room. We'll call them Elliot, Josh, and Hassan. At this point, we had been friends for about a month and a half and had gotten close fast as we spent almost all day together as a group. Elliot and Josh were drinking much more heavily than either Hassan or I, and at some point in the night had dared each other to brave the cold outside for 5 minutes without a shirt on. Now, nobody ever went outside at night. We had barely any lighting, and on top of the cold and the dark, if you managed to stumble off the catwalk between buildings, there was a real risk of falling off a ledge or causing an avalanche. Upper management gave us all a big, clear, fuck no for nighttime outdoor recreation. If you absolutely had to go outside, you were ordered to bring a walkie and a headlamp, which is how Elliot and Josh convinced us to go through with their wager. I remember knowing I couldn't convince them not to go through with it, but I could at least get them to wear a headlamp and bring a walkie just in case anything went wrong. They happily agreed to my concession and stripped down immediately. I badged us into the utility room and grabbed walkies and headlamps for all of us. We put the walkies to our own channel so the security staff wouldn't chew us out and got going. The plan was for Hassan and I to wait just outside the door and keep an eye on Elliot and Josh as they tried to outlast each other. Everyone agreed. We opened the door. It was unbelievably cold. I remember feeling like needles were hitting my exposed face. The wind chill was almost malicious. I could only imagine how the guys were feeling. Despite it all, they were smiling and laughing as they went further and further down the catwalk, taunting each other with every name you could think of. Hassan and I were laughing too, enjoying the absurdity of it all. That joy lasted about a minute before I saw Josh take his first step off the catwalk. As soon as he did it, I lost sight of his body, the lights from the path no longer illuminating him. All I saw was his headlamp moving further away into the snow. In the next second, I looked back to where Elliot was standing. It was just dark. I couldn't see him at all. Immediately, I radioed both. Elliot, Josh, you guys all right? Agonizing silence for what felt hours. All the while both Hassan and I could see Josh's headlamp head further and further downhill away from us. Hassan and I looked at each other and simultaneously ran into the dark after them, screaming both of their names. The wind took our voices with it, and it seemed we were only whispering. We got to the spot where we lost them, and there was no sign of Elliot or his things anywhere. The only evidence of Josh was the trail his body had made in the snow, but his headlamp was becoming increasingly erratic and farther away. I radioed once more. Josh, Elliot, stop fucking around. Let's go back in now. Again, nothing. Hassan looked at me with the fear of death. We both knew this wasn't a prank, and whatever was happening, we were now exposed to. I tried to comfort him with a hand on the shoulder, but told him sternly, get inside and get the CSO out here now. Tell him Josh got drunk and wandered off the mountain. I'll find Elliot. I pushed him towards the door, and he went running down the catwalk. I watched him go inside, and I was out there alone. Everything after happened within the span of 5 minutes. I looked towards where the closest building was. It was the North Ridge, which I was told houses the extended staff that used the facility primarily in the springtime. It was empty at the moment, and hoped beyond hope that I'd find Elliot inside. I walked a couple steps over and badged in. I remember the door slammed behind me. I flipped on the lights, but the generator for this building barely gave the bulbs any luminance. It was like walking through a gray haze, and the brutal metal architecture made it feel all the more unnatural. I was starting to get really antsy, and I radioed for both of my friends, pick up. As I walked down and checked out every room for signs of Elliot, I kept the same radio call every 10 seconds or so. Pick up. The routine pushed me on, through room after room. Pick up. Again and again until I heard anything. Pick up. The walkie crackled in response. I jolted to attention, and from the other end, I heard... I'll never forget the sound. A clear, human shush. Only us four had walkies at this time, on this channel. Elliot and Josh, as stupid as they could be, would never mess around this far. I waited, frozen in fear. Nearly crying now, I radioed again, pick up. Several moments of silence, and then, not out of the walkie, but in the building, I heard it once more. My head snapped to where I heard it from. Through a doorway, and behind a table, I could barely see Elliot slumped down. Not hurt, but looking almost catatonic. As I took a step towards him, several things happened at once. First, Elliot screamed. Not a shrieking scream, but a despair-filled, low scream from his stomach. As he did that, I saw the outline of a hand come from one end of the room and stretch to where he was. It was an impossible reach. I don't know how else to describe it. And time seemed to slow down as it crossed over the room. It enveloped Elliot's face, and it changed him. This part fucks me up the most. Everything else my brain can almost rationalize. But I saw my friend's features fold inward like a soft cloth. His eyes, nose and mouth folded in and flattened into nothing, and then came back. I screamed. Primal, guttural, animal screams came out of me as I ran out of that building and back outside. I'm ashamed, but I never even turned to look back or thought for another second about helping Elliot after that. I still carry that weight with me. I bolted out of North Ridge and onto the catwalk. To my surprise, there were maybe 10 fully equipped soldiers heading towards me with weapons drawn. 2 of them grabbed me, while the others proceeded into the building. As I was being taken away, I listened for gunfire. There wasn't any the rest of the night. They never found Elliot. At least that's what they told me. They said that they found Josh's frozen body huddled in the snow several hundred yards down the mountain. His headlamp was still on, and he didn't have his walkie on him. Of course, they questioned me about everything that happened, but strangely, my interviewers didn't act incredulous when I told them about the shush, or the hand, or Elliot's face. They simply nodded and wrote it down, and asked for more details. They didn't ask me to talk to the cops, just to sign an NDA so that the company would not be linked to any of the alleged circumstances that occurred that night. That got me thinking of so many more questions. Why would this not become an immediate investigation? How were 10 uniformed soldiers immediately there within 5 minutes, when this was a remote scientific facility? What was the real purpose of the North Ridge building? And come to think of it, how did my badge even work to get in? There's so much more I wish I could tell you all that I feel would link some loose ends together, but my hands are tied, and quite frankly, I'd like to forget most of it. I still do robotics work in the Northeast, but I will never go anywhere near those mountains again. I suggest you don't either. Story 3. I have always found urban exploring to be one of the most thrilling parts of my life. To enter a long-forgotten and derelict building, to see places others have abandoned, to touch the remnants of their past. It's always been a high, a reward after a hard week of work. But this last place I've been to, I wish I hadn't gone. I'm Arthur. A buddy of mine contacted me about a place no one's ever gotten footage of. It was a neglected facility off the beaten path on the rugged Scottish coastline. He knew I couldn't say no to such an opportunity. I've always wanted to explore a Cold War-era facility in the middle of nowhere. It's been a dream of mine since I was a kid. So I did it. I grabbed my camera and planned the nearly 12-hour road trip from London to the area. I won't name it, though, because I don't want anyone else to see and experience the things I did. I want to keep that place locked away, the way it was intended to be. God, I wish I hadn't been so curious. Even now, I just want to go back and find out more. But I won't. I can't. The path leading to the facility was, to say the least, rough. Steep cliffs, howling wind. Waves crashing below, deafening and relentless. Along the way, I noticed several weather-worn signs warning about private property, but those only made me more curious. Apparently, the area was under the control of some organization named the Office of Marine Integrity, a supposed NGO that protects marine life and coastal habitats. After walking around the exact coordinates and not finding anything that might lead to an entrance, really, this piece of land didn't look any different from the rest of the surrounding area, I accidentally tripped over something made of metal. Upon closer inspection, there was something unnatural in the rocks, a half-camouflaged steel hatch, slightly ajar. Weird, I thought to myself, didn't know any NGO worked in secrecy. The hatch was covered in moss, bolted but rusted through. On the hatch, there was a barely visible serial number, which now, in hindsight, should have been the first warning sign. Still, I went ahead and, with great struggle, managed to force the door open, revealing a corroded and dark elevator shaft. At this point, my gut was screaming at me to leave, but curiosity won out. "Well, that's not what I expected," I muttered, struggling to reach for my camera and turn it on. I climbed down, softly placing my feet, wary of the elevator's age. It had to be around, 60, 70 years old? I looked around and took a deep breath, maybe even said a quick prayer, I can't remember, before pressing the down button. The elevator hummed to life. It was creaky, unnatural. Lights flickered above me. "It's a miracle this still works," I said to the camera, eager to get to the bottom and see this place from the inside. The looks on their faces. I snickered, thinking of my soon-to-be jealous friends who would be the first to watch the entire tape. The elevator stopped abruptly. The doors slowly groaned open. The hallway ahead was dark, narrow, and filled with ankle-high, stagnant water. The air was thick with mold, salt, and rot, a combination that almost made me puke. My breathing echoed through the empty space, in a way calming me, as it wasn't completely silent. I fumbled around for my flashlight, making sure I didn't step on something I couldn't see in the water. When the light turned on, my biggest suspicion was confirmed. This wasn't an NGO facility. It was more than that. It had a secret that had only been hinted at before. The logo of the facility looked a bit too military. The signs were too faded, too serious in tone. The whole damn hidden research center didn't raise alarms in my head. But when I turned the flashlight on, everything suddenly made sense. "Welcome to Facility ESC-02, it read on the wall. Surveillance cameras hung dead. As I made my way inside across the murky water, I saw what seemed to be a reception, with scattered classified documents floating around in the water and on top of the desk. The further I walked, the more that creeping unease built in my stomach. This wasn't just an old facility. It was something worse. Something hidden, forgotten, and waiting. I placed the flashlight in my mouth and picked up a piece of paper, one that was still somewhat readable. Subject: Vessel Dweller Response Protocol. Undertow, local names. The white border, I had no idea what any of it meant. But I felt cold, like I was already too deep to turn back. The words echoed in my head as the paper shook in my hand. It had to be a prank, right? It can't be what I think it is, right? The rest was illegible. My stomach twisted. The paper trembled in my hand before dropping it. I glanced around, wondering what I got myself into. There was something about this place, something that didn't belong. A presence, maybe? I must be paranoid, I said, trying to reassure myself. The hairs on my arms stood up and my gut tightened. I could feel it, the weight of something watching me, waiting. But there was no one there, just the water and the endless silence. Despite every part of my body telling me not to, I went on, eager to explore the place. That's the whole reason why I was here. I couldn't turn back without any footage. I kept the flashlight low as I walked. Every step stirred the stagnant water, sending ripples that echoed down the corridor. Due to the darkness, I couldn't really see the true size of the facility, but it was quite big, enough for a team of 20 to work there. After walking past a break room with waterlogged and decaying furniture, I reached a hallway that sloped slightly downward. At the end of it, I saw a set of double doors, one of them hanging half off its hinges. A sound came through the opening, soft, wet, rhythmical steps that could be attributed to a human, but the moment I paid attention to them, they disappeared. Blaming it on my cowardice, I went ahead and made my way down to the doors, watching everything from my camera screen. It calmed me, thinking I was just a viewer of events. Beyond the doors, there was a large chamber, far colder than the rest of the facility. I quickly realized it was a dry dock, or had been. Half flooded now, lit only by the faint glow of emergency lights that somehow still worked. In the center, partially submerged, was an old fishing vessel, its hull cracked open, paint stripped, leaning on its side. There were cameras aimed at it, long dead, their lenses fogged over. A small control room sat nearby, just a dozen feet away. Inside, a computer terminal, more folders, more reports. This wasn't just a place of observation, it was a containment chamber. I started connecting the dots. Before approaching the vessel, I visited the small room to my right and picked another piece of paper up, my hands shaking with fear and a hint of excitement. Incident report. Subject, vessel dweller. 1979? Jesus. My eyes scanned the page, but most of the print smudged into gray swirls. But a few words stood out, enough to make my skin crawl. Vessel operator, Daniel Fraser. Mass approaching from below, climbed on board. White tall, not human, still believed to inhabit the vessel. My hands trembled. I almost dropped the page. The last line echoed in my head. Was it still here? I turned my head slowly toward the silent bulk of the wreck in the dry dock. It loomed in the dark, and suddenly I just wanted to run. So I did. I bolted out of the surveillance room, leaving the papers, folders, even my damn camera behind. Something shifted in the water behind me. Not loud, not a splash, but a ripple. A suggestion. Although I knew I should keep running, I slowly turned, eyes wide, my breathing interrupted by what I saw. At the edge of the dry dock, next to the vessel, something was standing tall, still, and pale. It wasn't moving, not really. Just watching. Stalking. Its white eyes penetrated the dark of the dock, discouraging me from flashing the light at it. Its feet disappeared in the ankle-high water, where I just couldn't see them. Its body seemed wrong, stretched, almost boneless. White like snow, skin rippling faintly like a reflection disturbed by motion. It didn't flinch, it didn't retreat. It belonged here. I did not. I stumbled back, but my feet slipped on the flooded floor, and I caught myself on the rusted edge of a filing cabinet. Still, the thing didn't move. Just followed me with its blank eyes, tilting its head with curiosity. Only when I reached the threshold of the hallway, my hand nearly on the wall to guide myself out, did it shift. I didn't see it move. I looked away for a moment, and that's when it came forward. A step, no splash, just displacement, like it moved through the water instead of in it. A low groan echoed from the vessel, like something massive shifting its weight after a long slumber. Only then did I realize I had woken it. This ship wasn't just a resting place, but a home. And I crossed a line I shouldn't have. I turned and bolted, scared that the creature would be faster and more adept at running through water than me. Still, I didn't stop. I kept going, perfectly remembering where the elevator was. Except for my movements, the facility was silent. Still, for a second, I thought it wasn't coming after me. But that wasn't a good enough reason for me to stop. I saw the elevator. It was a hallway away. Water leaked steadily from the ceiling, but the ripple I heard came from something bigger. I called the elevator, but the doors took their sweet damn time to open. Those few seconds seemed like hours, so I turned around, just out of instinct. It was staring at me from the end of the hallway. A silhouette of a creature that wasn't aggressive. It was territorial. I disturbed its peace, and now it wants me to leave. The elevator doors croaked open, and I shakingly stepped inside, not taking my eyes off the creature. It didn't move this time either. That's when I realized I hadn't seen him move. He was capable of killing me wherever, but chose not to. The ride-up was much longer than the descent. Maybe I was holding my breath the entire time. My eyes watered, either out of fear or for not blinking. I tried to piece together what I just witnessed, but there was no rational explanation for it. I awoke something terrible, but why was it kept here? What is this place? Office of Marine Integrity, my ass. The elevator clanked to a stop. I pulled myself out, climbed up the hatch, and rolled onto the wet grass, staring back at the cliffside. There was no sound from below, no pursuit, just the wind and the waves, and the unbearable weight of knowing something still lived under that cliff. I should have left it alone. God knows it left me alone. But as I lay there on the mossy ground, soaked and shaking, one thought burned behind my eyes like a fever. It let me go. Why? Story 4. I received the first message 3 days ago. I was on my break at work, and I got a text notification. It was odd. It was from an unknown number. Normally, I ignored those sorts of messages. Spammers and the like usually showed up with those types of auto texts. But this one was different. It was so strange because no number showed up at all. Just a message, hide and seek. I thought someone might have the wrong number for a friend they were trying to get in touch with to play a game apparently. So I responded, think you have the wrong number. Not sure who you're trying to reach, but they are not here. I went about the rest of my workday and was just wrapping things up. When I pulled my phone from my bag, I saw I had another text waiting for me. Same number or a lack of number. It was just another blank line where a number should display and the message, hide and seek. I was confused and slightly annoyed, so I responded again. Like I said before, I think you have the wrong number. Who is this? Who are you trying to get a hold of to play hide and seek? I waited, staring at the screen for a minute, and I was about to put it away when I saw a response. You hide and seek? My patience had reached its limit, and I figured if they would not answer then, I would just block the non-existent number and hope it would work. Despite the lack of a visible number, the option on the message thread still presented itself. So I was relieved when the weird conversation vanished. I got in my car and started to drive home. I got another notification as I got on the road and used my car's text-to-speech to read it to me. It was Mike, my roommate. He was asking me to pick up more beer from the store, since he had apparently finished off what we had left. I groaned at the message and the fact that I was always the one to buy it for us. It was getting old, but I needed a drink after the night I had, so I sent him a message back saying, I can this time, but if you're going to keep drinking everything we have, then you better start paying for it. I stopped by a nearby gas station close to our apartment and grabbed a case of Miller and continued home. As soon as I got back in the car, I received another text. I was getting annoyed already since I figured it was Mike complaining about being out of something else. But instead, as the text-to-speech read out the message, I knew it was something else. Seek, drink. It made sense now, and I immediately called Mike. He answered after several rings and sounded stoned. Hey man, what's up? Did you grab a beer? Yeah, I did. Are you messing with me? How are you sending those messages? When I call you, I can see your number, but not when you sent that weird text. What kind of app are you using? Also, what is the point? I am not home, yet I can't play hide and seek. Never mind that I'm not 5 years old. The seek drink thing was a bit of a giveaway for whatever weird game you were playing. There was a brief pause, and he responded, not sure what you mean, man. I didn't send anything like that. Weird. Who wants to play hide and seek? Anyway, get home, man. My buzz is fading. He hung up on me, and I was even more confused. If he had not sent the message, who did? I drove home, feeling a little on edge. When I got back inside, Mike greeted me at the door. Of course, by greeted, I mean he took the case of beer and walked to the fridge, removed two, and sat back down on the couch. Nice to see you too. I mumbled under my breath. I wanted to ask again about the weird message, but I just shrugged and grabbed a drink for myself and lumbered to my room. I was tired, so I decided to call in an early night. When I stepped into my room, my phone buzzed, and I saw another text from no number. Almost time, hide or seek. I was getting creeped out at that point. I did not know how the messages kept getting through after blocking it. I decided to respond again. Stop messaging me. I do not know who this is, and I do not want to play. Leave me alone. I hit send and tried blocking it again. This time I turned my phone off for good measure. I tried to settle down and just go to sleep. I managed to nod off for a bit, but after a while I heard a knock at my door. I jolted up and heard the slurring voice of Mike. Hey man, I don't know what the hell, but I think someone is trying to get a hold of you. I just got a trippy message, and it sounded like what you were talking about earlier. Check it out. I rushed to the door and saw Mike looking at his phone in a confused stupor. I grabbed it from him and looked at the message. Last. Chance, hide, or seek. My heart sank, and I felt a wave of panic rising in my chest. I asked Mike, when did you get this? He shrugged his shoulders. A while ago, man. I don't remember exactly. I was not looking at my phone. What's going on? I stepped back into my room and turned my own phone back on. Sure enough, I had a missed message. Okay, hide. I stared at the words in mounting fear. I had no idea what to do, but I felt suddenly exposed. I considered calling the police, but I did not know what I would tell them. Nothing had happened, only a creepy text thread. Yet something felt wrong, like something bad was about to happen. I looked over at Mike, and he looked confused and a bit paranoid as well. Before I could try and explain things, the lights went out. At first, I thought it might be a power outage. Then I heard the slow creaking sound of the front door opening, despite being sure I had locked it when I got home. Terror gripped me, and I knew something was very wrong. I crouched down in the dark and whispered to Mike the only thing I could think to say: hide. I crawled on my floor and under my bed. I was about to call 911 when my phone suddenly died as well. It was on one moment and then just lost power despite having over half a charge left. I put the useless device in my pocket and tried to see if there was anything I could use as a light source. I froze and thought better about moving when I heard a strange shuffling sound. Then heavy footsteps, much heavier than Mike's. I noticed the temperature in the room had dropped suddenly and it felt like it was freezing. As the footsteps resounded and moved closer, I smelled a fetid tinge in the air as well, like something rotten. I crawled as far back and huddled up as small as I could make myself under the bed and held my breath. I heard my closet door gently shutting and thought it might be Mike hiding in there. Then the heavy footsteps picked up the pace. I suddenly realized if I could hear the door closing, whatever the hell was in here with us could hear it too. I considered calling out to Mike to move, but fear froze my voice. The heavy footsteps were in the room now. Despite my efforts to try and see what stalked us, I could not make anything out. I sat there, silent and immobile, holding my breath and waiting. After several long moments, I thought we might be safe. Then I heard the door to the closet break and shatter. Then Mike screamed, a haunting and nightmare-inducing shriek. Something had found him. The cry of terror was suddenly silenced. I did not hear anything violent, just the scream and then utter silence. I had no idea what the hell had just happened. For a long while I sat there paralyzed with fear, until finally the light came back on. When I summoned the courage to creep out from under the bed and see what had happened, I was shocked when laying on the ground was the shattered remains of my closet door. Despite the ruin of the door, there were no traces of anyone or anything else. Mike had vanished. I slowly called out, louder and more emboldened, as I moved into the hall where the light was on again. No one responded. No one else was there. I stumbled through the apartment searching for my roommate, but he was gone. Worse still, I had no idea just where the hell he had gone. No trace of Mike has shown up in the last couple days since it happened. I don't know if anything will. I think he can finally be declared missing, but I don't know if it will do any good. It was impossible, but whatever had broken into our place had found him, and now he was missing. He had lost hide and seek and that thing. Whatever was took him away. The entire nightmare is unbelievable, yet even now, as I write about my friend's impossible disappearance, I am shocked when I receive another text, hide and seek. I don't know what to do. I don't know what this is. Maybe I should respond again, a different way this time. Maybe it might help, might keep me safe from whatever or whoever is doing this. Perhaps I can find out. My reply is onevord, siek. That's it for today's creepy Reddit tales. Before we go, I just want to say a quick thanks to all of you for watching, liking, and sticking around. You guys keep this channel going, and I'll be back soon with more stories that'll make your skin crawl. Drop a comment if you've got your own spooky tale to share, and I'll see you in the next one.